Hello everyone and welcome back to Kobean History. In today's medieval professions video we will be having a look at the perfumer. There is a common misconception that people in the Middle Ages, especially the peasants, were very smelly. And one of the reasons that people think that is that they think the people in the Middle Ages didn't know hygiene, but they did. And on top of that they even used items to make them smell even nicer. Like how we nowadays use perfume. But perfume is actually a pretty old invention, and that is what we will be having a look at in today's video. The first perfumers can be traced back to Mesopotamia to around 1200 BC to a woman named Taputi in Babylonia who was mentioned in a cuneiform tablet. She developed techniques for scent extraction that would lay the basis for perfume making to this day. Knowledge of perfume reached medieval Europe around the 14th century, and this is believed to be due to the spread of Arabic knowledge and influence. It is believed to have been the Hungarians who first introduced what we now see as modern perfume, which was made of scented oils blended in an alcohol solution. And the first mention of this comes from 1370 when it was made for Queen Elizabeth of Hungary, after which it soon became known in Europe as Hungary water. The French started to cultivate flowers for perfume essence soon after, and a major industry started to appear in the south of the country, and France remains at the center of European perfume design and manufacturing to this day. During the Middle Ages, just as today, proper perfumes were quite expensive, so the common folk or the peasants would have not had access to the same scents as the royalty or nobles. So the peasants would be limited to more earthy scents, such as rosemary, sage, sandalwood and cloves. Peasants also generally didn't have the means to make it into proper perfume, so what they could do is just rub the herbs on their skin, or they could just carry them in their clothes or in a bag with them. Before perfume reached Europe, and after as well, you also had other ways to make yourself smell nice, such as using a pomander, which comes from the French pomme d'ambre, meaning apple of amber, which was a sort of ball cage which was made to put herbs and other scents in. This ball could then be worn on the body, and it would act as a perfume as well. So instead of putting the scent directly on your skin, you would carry it around with you. Some of these pomanders would also have different compartments which would allow the people to mix scents together. It is believed that pomanders are derived from an item known as censers, which were used in religious ceremonies. At first they were used as religious keepsakes, but eventually they were seen as a form of jewelry as well. So they were made out of gold and silver, and intricate designs could be carved in them as well, as you can see with this one over here. Or they could go even further, like this one over here, which is a pomander made in the shape of a little ship. But for the more common people you could also get the same effect by carrying a little bag of herbs around. Also, another version of the pomander is used in witchcraft. This version is made out of oranges, cloves, oils and a golden ribbon, and this type was used in witchcraft as a recovery charm. Back then as well, some people believed that the plague was caused by bad air. So plague doctors would often try to treat victims by covering their mouths and noses in a leather pouch which would have been filled with cloves, cinnamon and a variety of other spices, which they believed would protect them. The Renaissance period saw perfume development flourish as royalty and the wealthy began to invest more in masking their body odors. English perfume use peaked in the 16th century throughout the reigns of Henry VIII to Queen Elizabeth I. It is claimed that all public places were actually scented during Elizabeth's rule, as she had a low tolerance of bad smells, though this cannot be proven. Rosewater was a favorite of nobility and would often be used to wash their hands after a meal, During this time, perfume was often also used as a substitute for washing, as the quality of water at that time, especially in large cities such as London, was extremely poor and riddled with bacteria. It is also noted that during this time England began to cultivate lavender rather than importing it from France, which made it cheaper, and thus it became accessible to more people, who would use it to scent their homes, clothes and themselves. During the Middle Ages, the town of Grasse was specialized in leather tanning, and quite a few glovers were based there as well. But due to the leather tanning process, the leather could kind of smell bad, and that's something that the nobility wasn't very happy with. So eventually someone in Grasse came up with the idea of scented leather gloves, and they offered a pair of scented gloves to Catherine de' Medici, which was the Queen of France at the time. Soon after, it spread through the royal court and high society, and the fields around the town started to be used in the cultivation of scented plants. And that's when the perfume industry at Grasse started to develop. It wouldn't be until about a century later, however, that the perfumed gloves reached its peak in popularity. And we can see a previously set up guild of glovers turned into the glovers and perfumers. However, due to higher taxes on leather and competition from Nice, the leather industry in Grasse decreased, but the perfume industry stayed there. And at this time, the guild of glovers and perfumers just turned into the guild of perfumers. And thus it became known as the perfume capital, which is a title it still holds to this day. Perfume did have a darker side, however, as perfumers were also known to be able to craft poisons. An example of this is when a French duchess was murdered when a perfumer's poison was rubbed into her gloves, which then slowly absorbed into her skin. The ascension of King Louis XV in 18th century France saw another resurgence of perfume development, which would later lead to his court being nicknamed Le Court Parfumé, meaning the perfume's court. This name was deserved, as they would apply perfume to their skins, clothing, fans and furniture. And it's also claimed that King Louis demanded a different fragrance for his apartment every day. One way this was done was by placing bowls of dried flowers throughout the rooms. And another way King Louis displayed his wealth was by bathing in goat's milk with rose petals. Essential oils could be made through the process of enfleurage, which is done using oil or fat to extract the fragrance from flowers. With enfleurage, a mixture of beef fat and lard was spread on both sides of a plate of glass, and flowers were placed onto it. After the fragrances have been absorbed by the oil and fat, alcohol is used to extract them. Cold extraction was another technique that was used, mostly for citrus fruits. This was done by making some holes in the fruit and then pressing the juices out of them, which is pretty easy to do, because using more complicated extraction techniques could sometimes alter their fragrance. The process of maceration would be used for roses, violets, lily of the valley, as well as a few other types of flowers. With maceration, the flowers would be tied into a sack and immersed in a vat which was filled with fat, heated to between 50 to 70 degrees Celsius, which was then left for approximately 48 hours. In this process, the scents would evaporate out of the fat, and then alcohol was used to isolate them. And distillation is also another common technique that was used for scent extraction. There were three main types of distillation as well. You had steam distillation, which is probably the one you think of when you think of distillation. This is when a water solvent was used and the essential oils would then be extracted through the steam. You also had dry distillation, which is kind of similar but only without the water solvent. So for example, a plant could be heated up without the use of water, and this process would mostly be used if you wanted to extract woody notes. The last type of distillation is a little more tricky and expensive to do. It's called fractionation, and it is used to get different scents out of one raw material. It's similar to normal distillation, but now you use different temperature and different times as to when a specific scent is extracted. So you could separate multiple different scents that come from the same raw material. The most common method, however, was to place flowers or herbs in a jar of oil, which would often be heated, and then after some time the oil would be expressed by using a bag press, which would trap the flowers or herbs and just leave you with the perfumed oil. That was my video on the medieval perfumer. I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, let me know by leaving a like down below. And if you're interested in more medieval professions, you can click the playlist on screen right now. Or if you're interested in history as a whole, you can check out my channel for a wider variety of topics.